Welcome to Law Talk, folks. I'm Sam Lassante, your host. The main man, of course, is Attorney Conrad Falvello. And for any of all of your legal needs, you can give Connie a call at area code 570-788-4191 or go to his website, falvellolaw.com. Today, a very interesting show. I learn a lot about on these shows. We're going to talk about car insurance. Folks, this is critical that you listen to the show. Car insurance, top to bottom. I find this very exciting, Connie, because it's always after the fact when people get, I didn't know this, I should have had that. And for a couple, sometimes people are saving a couple pennies, not realize it was going to cost. But so why is it very important that we look at our car insurance?
Well, Sam, this is an issue that we visited several times here, and I think it's important to visit it more than once for that reason, because for no other reason, the state law requires that if you own an automobile, you cannot register your automobile unless you show proof of insurance. So you're required to buy insurance. In that respect, it's the state version for auto insurance of Obamacare, which I think we should mention. Today's the day. We're taping on Thursday, June 28th. Today's the day that the Supreme Court's supposed to decide that issue, so we're all looking forward to that decision one way or the other. And, as you said, what's my opinion? I told you I'd have an easier time handicapping a Super Bowl, so
well, it's
who knows?
That'll be a whole show in itself, because you and Dr. Greco did, on my Sam Lassante show, discuss a lot about this. When you're looking at car insurance, the American public today, they're being bombarded with so many things every day. Everyone's trying to save wherever they can save, okay? And it's always important. One I read yesterday in the Drudge Report that one insurance company we're all familiar with will spend $1 billion in advertising, okay? Mm-hmm. And so you hear this. We'll get it for legal for less, okay? What is legal for less, and why don't I want it for my family?
There are a lot of companies promoting, I think one of the slogans is legal for less, and they say, we'll make you legal in Pennsylvania, minimum legal coverage at a very low premium, and of course that's going to be attractive to everybody. What most people don't realize is that what you may save on the premium in terms of tens or a couple $100s even, you may lose thousands if you happen to get hurt. Mm-hmm. And really what the Legal for Less promotion does, and if you purchase Legal for Less insurance, what you are doing is, in large part, you're taking on that risk that you're not insuring with the company. That means that if you're hurt, even you don't have to be catastrophically hurt. It can be a relatively serious injury or a chronic injury, an injury that persists for a long time. And the circumstances are such, if you're, for example, hit by somebody with no insurance or not enough insurance, you could theoretically lose thousands of dollars. If you're hurt, you can actually lose thousands of dollars. And what we have today is, maybe Andy can put it up on the screen, and I can show you. Now this, what we have on the screen right now is it's a part of what they call a declaration of coverage sheet, Sam, and this particular policy is a fairly good policy. This is not a legal for less policy, and you can see in the right hand where the numbers are, this policy insures 4 vehicles. Each column represents a vehicle, and each number as you go from top to bottom is the premium on that particular vehicle for each of the coverages designated. And if this were a legal for less policy declaration sheet, it would be about half the size, and most of the coverages that you see on here wouldn't be there. What you would have is liability protection. If you look at the top, it says full tort. You wouldn't have full tort because you can buy limited tort, which is cheaper. Liability protection, Andy, if we go to that, this policy provides $400,000 per person, $300,000 per accident. That's pretty good coverage. Pennsylvania minimum, Sam, believe it or not, is $15,000. Mm-hmm. per person, 30,000 per accident. So a minimum policy would be quite a bit less. And on this coverage, the liability coverage, that means if you or someone in your family, God forbid, is inattentive and should happen to hurt somebody, you're covered up to $100,000 for each person hurt, up to $300,000 for one accident if there are more than one people hurt. And of course, here it has property damage up to 10. I think that's 100,000.
Yes, 100,000.
So that's good as well. That's very, very good coverage. Andy, if we could move down to the next one. First-party medical benefits, and Sam, you've heard me talk about no fault many, many times. This is the portion of the policy that is the no fault portion. And on this particular policy, you see medical expenses of $100,000. That is very good coverage. Legal for less, $5,000. And here's why that's important. If you have health insurance that provides high copays, high deductibles, and you're in an accident, if you have the minimum medical coverage, which is only $5,000, Sam, if you're hurt in an accident, even if you hit some ice and your car goes off the road and hits a pole or a tree, people don't know this, but you're covered. Your medical insurance on your auto policy will cover the injuries in that type of an accident. It covers regardless of fault, and that's why they call it no fault. So Andy, if we could go back to that for a second. So if you look at the medical expense of $100,000, if you only have $5,000 of medical expense, if you need a couple MRIs, an emergency room visit, that's gone.
You're done.
That's gone. And after the $5,000 you're paying out of your pocket for co-pays and deductibles, this particular policy, which I said is generally a good policy, will pay up to $100,000. And I would guess, Sam, if you are handicapping injuries in auto accidents, $100,000 would cover most. That's quite good coverage. The coverage underneath medical expense, income loss. If you have a legal for less policy, that's not there. And that is, to me, a very, very important coverage option for everybody because even in a relatively minor accident, you can have an injury that will take you out of work for a month, 2 months, even 3 months, depending upon how serious the injury is, what type of work you do. This is a relatively good policy. This provides for income protection of up to $1,500 a month, up to a total of $25,000 if needed.
Okay, folks, I'm talking to Attorney Conrad Falvello, and it's Law Talk. We're going to come back. Folks, you don't want, in our opinion, legal for less. You're going to pay the price if something should happen. We'll be back right after this, and maybe we can comment on the Obamacare decision. Stay with us. Welcome back to Law Talk, folks. I'm Sam Lassant, and the star of the show here is Attorney Conrad Falvello. For your legal information, call him at 788-5191, area code 570, or go to falvellolaw.com. Folks, we're talking about car insurance, top to bottom. Why is it important? And what is this legal for less? Is it really a good thing for your family? Evidently, according to Attorney Falvello, it is not a good thing. When we were coming, before we went to break, we had a policy up, which was a full tort option policy, and I think at the point we were talking about the individual medical, the income loss. Okay,
correct.
So we could start with the individual income loss.
Yeah, if we have that back up, Andy, we left off with the income loss protection at up to $1,500 a month, up to $25,000. And as I indicated before, this is an optional part of the policy. You don't have to buy this. But let me tell you why it's important to buy it. And let me point out that this, when we get to the bottom, after we run top to bottom here, I want to look at the premium and point something out there. But if you look at this from left to right, income loss protection, $10 on one vehicle, $17 on another, $11 on another, and $15 on another. So for the 4 vehicles, it's somewhere in the $50 per year range. So what you're buying for $50 a year, Sam, is up to $1,500 a month, up to $25,000. And here's why that's important. If you don't have that coverage and you're hurt in an automobile accident, whether it's your fault, somebody else's fault, or nobody's fault, but you can't work, you're out of luck. You're not going to have an income source from anywhere unless you have maybe short-term disability, possibly long-term disability. This is automatic. The $50 or so that this individual is paying for that coverage, that is a contract this automobile insurance company has to pay them if they're disabled. Without it, the family would have no income. So it's very, very important, in my opinion, a very, very important part of the coverage picture. The next two are also optional: accidental death and funeral benefit. Those, again, you can see good coverages, $5,000, $2,500 for literally a few dollars. If you look at the premium cost for those coverages, there it's $5, $8 to $13 a year for both of them. So it's really, really nominal. On a legal for less, you don't have any of them. Andy, let's run down to the next item. Uninsured motorist coverage. Here again, I would suggest you buy it. On this policy, though, you can see a difference. And you notice this is a minimum coverage and it is unstacked. And let me tell you what that means. Anytime you buy uninsured, or Andy, let's drop down to the next one too, underinsured. These two are kind of like a package. They have to be offered to you, and they have to be offered to you with the same coverage amounts as your liability. So on this policy, it's $100, $300 for liability, but only $1,530, which is minimum, for uninsured and underinsured. That means that these individuals opted to sign down the coverages for those two. And not only did they opt to sign down, they elected not to stack the coverages. You could see that here. It says unstacked. Now, these premiums at that level and unstacked are very cheap. $8 and $16 for each vehicle for the year. So, $32.64. It's not much. It's less than $100 a year. However, if this person or somebody in this person's family is hit by somebody that has no insurance, they can make a claim for uninsured motorist benefits, but only up to $15,000 per person. So as you can see, that's quite a bit less, $85,000 less than their liability coverage. If you opt for the same coverage, the uninsured and the underinsured would be $100,000 per person, $300 per accident. Now let me address what the policy says there about unstacked. On the and underinsured portion of the policy, you can elect to stack coverages. Now let's take the unstacked out of there and put stacked in. If this person had elected stacked but still maintained the $1,530, in that same scenario I just mentioned, you can add up the coverages on the four vehicles. So that means that if someone's hurt by somebody who has no insurance, you take the $15,000, times it by 4, so that's $60,000. You would have $60,000 of uninsured. But if you had $100,000 per person on uninsured, stacked on 4 vehicles, then you're protecting your family up to $400,000 per person. You add them up. Now, for the additional coverage premium, it's a huge difference. And I'm going to give you a very striking example, Sam, of how not having uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage and not having it stacked can affect someone. We had a client come in, and this particular gentleman was in a horrific accident. He was hit from behind on the interstate, was in the hospital for weeks. He could not work, still can't work after almost 2 years since the accident. And this particular individual was hit by a car that had $15,000 minimum, a legal for less policy, $15,000 of liability coverage. This gentleman had no underinsurance, no uninsurance. And that means that even though he lost thousands and thousands of dollars in income, him and his family, he had no recourse beyond, essentially practically no recourse beyond the $15,000. So this particular individual was really, really hurt badly financially because they didn't have these additional coverages. Neither did this individual have the income loss protection. So that's a fairly striking example. It is, I wouldn't say unusual, because the legal for less companies are making inroads here, and we're seeing more and more of it. But that's what can happen, Sam. That is what can happen if you don't know what these coverages are, and you trade maybe a couple $100 in premium for perhaps a couple $100,000 in financial losses if you're hurt.
I don't think you'll. I think right now in northeastern Pennsylvania, I think more people understand and realize that there are a lot of people out there driving that do not have the insurance coverage.
Yep.
And that, especially these days. And I think it would be foolish for someone not to look at underinsured and uninsured, that part of their policy.
Sam, one of the first things we do, if we have a client come in, they've been in an accident, we always look at the policy. We try to look at it at the first visit, and really in large part because, as you can see, most of the coverages on your vehicle are there to protect you. That you can access, for example, the medical coverage, you can access the income loss, you can access the underinsured motorist coverage if you need it. And I think it's important to explain that to them right out of at our first visit.
Well, folks, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back, conclude this. It's a declaration page. Every one of your policies have this. Now, understand, there are some people out there who are not really, really the best in taking care of their vehicles. Some just want to get a fast insurance to get their license or whatever, and just will take the lowest amount of insurance. And that's where that legal for less thing is really a sad thing to look at. Someone just may want to buy insurance and not have any of the major coverage.
In my opinion, Sam, legal for less, it can potentially be harmful to the individual that buys it, and harmful to the individual if they hit somebody, if somebody has that coverage.
We're going to take a break right now. We'll be back right after this. Maybe we'll comment a little bit on the Obamacare decision by the Supreme Court. Stay with us.
Okay.
Welcome back to Law Talk, folks. I'm Sam Lassant, and the host here is the main man, is Attorney Conrad Falvello. You can contact Attorney Falvello at 570-788-4191 or falvellolaw.com, or go to our website, ssptv.com, and watch any of the Law Talk shows that we've done in a number of years. Connie, concluding with the insurance, car insurance, why it's so important to have full tort, and looking at 4 vehicles here, and it's amazing what the fee is.
Andy, can you put that back up for us? I just want to point something out. Let's go right to the bottom. I'll run over the 2 last coverages. Andy, if you could go right down. Thanks. The physical damage coverage, most of us know what that is. It's comprehensive, which covers items if they're stolen out of your vehicle. Collision protects your vehicle. There's a $250 deductible here. Those are optional coverages, somewhat less important. They're protect the vehicle and property in the vehicle. But I think what's important to note here, Sam, is the total annual policy premium, if you notice, only just a tad under $1,500 per year for 4 cars. And it's a very good policy with some exceptions. We pointed out the on and under limits and the unstacked, but that's less than $400 per year per vehicle, which isn't bad. And for example, if you were to get the even a little bit higher on and underinsured, for example, if you got $50,000 per person and stacked, that still gives you $200,000 per person. That may not bump that policy or that premium up too much. Your $8 on the uninsured may go to $15, and the underinsured, your $16 may go to $20 or $25. So if you're buying insurance, or if your policy's coming around, and hopefully you have an agent that you can sit down with. I'm not a big fan of the online or telephone purchasing of auto insurance because nobody explains this to you. And when you get your declaration, you just look at the premium paid and that's it. And you really don't understand what's going on, excuse me, in terms of coverage until something happens, and then it's too late.
I think that's the critical part. We've talked about this so many times, and one of the shows we did this, a few people had called and said they looked at the declaration form, okay, and an agent is always better to go to. I mean, and these are 4 vehicles, so
Yeah.
some people may have 2,
Right.
but the full tort benefits, I think, is critical.
Well, the full tort, you retain all rights to make a claim. Limited tort, you give up the right to make a claim for pain and suffering unless you're seriously hurt, which is a very subjective definition. You know, serious impairment of body function, serious injury. Serious injury could be different for me than it would be for somebody who is required to do heavy labor 8 hours a day all the time. And why deal with that issue if you don't have to? And again, people will buy, oh, you have, quote, full coverage. Well, full coverage under Pennsylvania law would be limited tort, $15,000 of liability, $5,000 of medical, and just about nothing else.
Well, folks, once again, it's important to look at your insurance policy. Believe me, particularly these days when you're driving around, there are a lot of people who do not have insurance. The Supreme Court today, folks, upheld the Obamacare, and by a 5-4 decision. And I guess now we have some breaking news. As Connie, what is your opinion on that?
Sam, if they upheld it, and of course this came down, this happened as we're taping here from the beginning of the show to this latter part of the show, if it was upheld completely, that means that a majority of the Supreme Court, after reviewing the statute and reviewing the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, determined that what's commonly known as Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act did not violate the Commerce Clause, particularly the individual mandate. And for those of you who don't know what the individual mandate is, Sam, that is the requirement by the federal government through the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Revenue, meaning the IRS, that everyone who can afford to buy health insurance must buy health insurance. And the Supreme Court is the ultimate decider here, and that's it. There's no appeal, maybe a reconsideration, but I doubt it.
So it says in a landmark ruling with wide-ranging implications, the Supreme Court today upheld the so-called individual mandate requiring Americans to buy health insurance or pay a penalty, the key part of President Obama's signature health care law, right. Which is right now the only, I guess, what's your opinion on that? How would that, because you and Dr. Greco had an extensive conversation with me on that.
Let's start with the mandate. The presumption for the mandate, Sam, is this. I believe if you want to divide it into Republican and Democrat, that would be the easiest thing to do. The Democrats say, look, we have 40 million uninsured in the country. If an uninsured person or millions of these uninsured people get sick or hurt or what have you, they walk into an emergency room, they have to be treated. That is a financial burden, and we have to address that. The other component of that is that when they did demographic studies and throughout the country, and they said, you know, here's what's happening. Young people, maybe in their 20s and 30s, that are relatively healthy, say to themselves, well, I'm healthy, I don't need health insurance. And they don't buy it. And they don't buy it. So the presumption is we're getting hit on two ends. Number one, uninsured people cost us dollars, and people who don't buy insurance cost us dollars because they're not paying premiums into either the private or public sector insurance pool that insures all of the rest of us. So they decided to mandate it. They said you have to buy it. So that means that the revenue is going to go up, but many, many more people are going to be insured. So perhaps a person who previously was uninsured for health insurance, maybe they only had a little cold or something you can manage on yourself for the most part. If they have insurance, they're going to go in and then demand care. What we don't know is what is that going to cost. The other component of this, Sam, that concerns me, and I think concerns Dr. Greco, actually two components, is just like car insurance. The government is going to say, here's the minimum. It's going to be the healthcare version of legal for less. Here's what you have to buy. And I think a lot of people are going to, a lot of people and a lot of companies are going to default to the legal for less coverage. High deductibles, high copays, okay? And what's that going to do to reimbursements to hospitals and doctors? I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on them, and that's, in my opinion, not bad, because they're going to be asking hospitals and doctors to provide the same care for less money. That means more people will be called upon to do more things, and I think that that injects a lot of risk into the care, because you're going to have tired nurses, tired doctors. That part of it I don't particularly care for, and of course the part that Dr. Greco said is that you're going to have the government telling us who can get treated and who can't.
Well, it's going to be interesting, okay? Particularly this election is going to be there. It's going to tell the story. Folks, Conrad Falvello, you can contact him at area code 570-788-4191, or go to his website, favellolaw.com. Remember, all of the Law Talk shows can be seen 24/7 on ssptv.com. Just hit shows, Law Talk, and you can get all that information. Give Connie a call, particularly if you want to go over your car insurance. We'll see you next time.